Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Just a few days ago, Bill Belichick to the Atlanta Falcons seemed inevitable. First, there was a social media post with a nice infographic that the Falcons put up saying Bill Belichick had conducted an interview with the team. A few days later, there was a second social media post with a nice infographic that linked to a news story talking about Belichick's second interview with the team. Then we saw the Falcons revealed a full list showing they satisfied or plan to satisfy the Rooney Rule with a bunch of underreported names. Just as early as a couple of days ago, owner Arthur Blank, it was reported, was going all in on Belichick. But a lot has changed since then. Last night, The Athletic's Josh Kendall reported that Belichick's candidacy has lost momentum, and that report saying it's Belichick or bust in Atlanta are inaccurate. And we just also found out that two of the most sought-after potential head coaches are now on the list for interviews with the Atlanta Falcons. That first one is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, who are playing in the NFC Championship game this Sunday. Johnson, many believe to be the best candidate on the market with all that the Lions have done to improve that offense. He is a real leader in the locker room. A lot of teams are very interested potentially in bringing in a guy like Johnson. But we also found out Jim Harbaugh, head coach for the national champion Michigan Wolverines, is coming in for a second interview. So things are starting to get pretty serious there with Harbaugh, who also has been interviewing with the LA Chargers. In fact, counting Belichick, Johnson, and Harbaugh, the Falcons are interviewing over a dozen candidates for the job. Kendall also added that more interviews may be added as the week goes on, and that the search may not be finished by week's end. And it's very possible that candidates being with teams that are still in the postseason, the Falcons may not make an announcement until after the Super Bowl. So we're talking almost 3 weeks from now before we potentially find an answer on who will be the Falcons' next head coach. And if they're willing to wait that long, clearly something is not going right with Bill Belichick. And as of right now, there doesn't seem to be any interest from some of the other teams. We saw the Cowboys are keeping Mike McCarthy. I don't think that's a good decision, but that's what's happening. Nick Sirianni, this could change, but as of right now, he's still the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's been crickets from teams like the Chargers and the Panthers when it comes to interest from Bill Belichick. So it is a real possibility that Bill Belichick will be unemployed entering the 2024 NFL season. Now, I think some of this makes a lot of sense. Belichick would likely want full control of player personnel in addition to being the head coach. And that's just not how NFL teams do things now. Belichick, according to Robert Kraft, didn't have full control of the Patriots when he was initially hired, but by the second and third Super Bowl, he was basically the dictator-in-chief of the Patriots, and he did a pretty damn good job, at least up until after he drafted Gronk and Aaron Hernandez and company. He still did a pretty good job drafting defensive players right up until this past season. And look, these interviews, Belichick has got to be facing some really difficult questions. And it's not like Bill is the most charismatic guy. I'm sure he is well prepared going into these interviews. I don't see Belichick going into this like he does the press conference, mumbling to reporters. But he's going to have to answer some really difficult questions in these interviews. And I don't know how he responds. So some of these questions, right? We don't have a franchise quarterback here in Atlanta. Why did you bungle the Mac Jones situation? What exactly happened there? What did you learn from it? And what are you going to do differently here? What pieces are you going to put around the quarterback? Because Mac Jones clearly didn't have a lot of help. Also, how come you haven't been able to find an offensive coordinator in New England that works since Josh McDaniels left? We saw what happened with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, and there are all these stories coming out that are saying, hey, they're going to follow you wherever you go. I'm not sure we're comfortable having those guys running our offense or even being on our coaching staff. So what are you going to do there? Who do you want to be your offensive coordinator? Are you going to completely flip the staff on its head? There's been issues with nepotism in New England. I'm sure your Suns have done a really good job coaching, and maybe they've earned a role on this team, but are they going to come with you? I think more of the issue with Belichick's so-called nepotism is you're constantly hiring your old buddies, guys that you've worked with, and maybe that worked out in the past, but your recent record is not showing that it has worked out. What have you done lately? And that's really the big question. What have you done lately? And I think the most important thing that the Atlanta Falcons are probably asking Bill Belichick is about his philosophy when it comes to the NFL draft and when it comes to NFL free agency, which is just around the corner. Why weren't you filling the needs on your roster? Patriots fans have been saying, I doubt they said Patriots fans, but we've all been saying for probably 2 to 3 seasons now that, hey, this offense does not have a real top threat, a top downfield threat. And as we've seen in New England the last few years, the receiving core has gotten progressively worse. And now you need a new quarterback in New England. You're not there anymore, but you had your quarterback of the future and it didn't work out. We saw a mental breakdown from Mac Jones, a high IQ, accurate quarterback, and it completely imploded, and we don't even know if he's going to have a real future in this league anymore. So how is that philosophy going to work here in Atlanta? We see teams go into the offseason saying, all right, these are our biggest needs. And clearly the Patriots have had needs at tackle and at wide receiver and at tight end for the last few seasons now, and you haven't really done anything to address those positions. In fact, you're on the record saying, I don't draft based on needs. I draft the best candidate available. And what did you do a couple of years ago? You selected Cole Strange, a guy that many thought would fall to the 3rd round in the draft. You picked him in the middle of the 1st round. What is the deal with that, Bill? You selected more guards in this last draft, a position where you had a plethora of players. Is that what you're going to do here in Atlanta if we give you full control of player personnel? I don't know what the answers are when Bill Belichick gets asked those questions, and anytime he's been asked anything like that in the past, he gets really peeved, right? So I don't think he's going to do that because he's trying to get a job, but it's very possible if Bill wants a head coaching job, whether it's in Atlanta or whether it's somewhere else, he's going to have to make some concessions. And perhaps that involves saying, hey, I am willing to stick to head coaching and work with a general manager who reports to you, Arthur Blank, and not to me. And I don't know if Bill's ready for that because it's been 2 decades now of Bill having complete control of the Patriots. And look, Bill was always ahead of the curve. He was always willing to adjust. He zigged when other coaches and other GMs were zagging. And it worked out very well up until Tom Brady left. And since then, he's been trying to outsmart the room with unconventional picks. And we were all happy when it worked out while Tom Brady was on the team. But now people look back and they go, was Brady in that offense and having Josh McDaniels there hiding some of these problems? Because, I mean, even if you look at the last Super Bowl that the Patriots won, that was by far the weakest roster they ever had on any of those Super Bowl teams. Any of the teams that even made the Super Bowl and lost had much better rosters. That team was a real surprise. They got hot at the right time, even though they went into the postseason not playing very well. They changed their philosophy. And look, I'm sure Arthur Blank and NFL owners are going to say, Bill, you're still a great head coach, and you do seem to put your team in the best position to win. You put really excellent game plans together. But, we go back and we watch these games, and you're on your own 40-yard line, 4th and 1, and you almost always decide to punt. And you got rid of the fullback, kind of your bread and butter of the offense, and you're just not being aggressive anymore while all the other teams are moving the other direction. What is the deal with that? So I think it is a real possibility here that Bill Belichick goes into the 2024 season unemployed. Now, that's not the end of the world, right? Bill could always go to the broadcast booth or be an ESPN analyst or go on NFL Network and do some work there. We know he loves talking about the history of the game, and he was part of the top 100 NFL players a few years ago, and I think Bill would really enjoy doing something like that. And just because he's grumpy doesn't mean he couldn't be charismatic on television. I think a lot of people would be interested in what Bill has to say, but if you want to do that, if you want to pull a Sean Payton and go on TV for a year, take a year off and try to enter as a coach in 2025, that may work out. Typically 20 to 30% of NFL teams have head coaching vacancies each season, but Bill Belichick's going to be 73 years old entering the 2025 NFL season. How many teams would want that? Look, I'm rooting for Bill Belichick. I hope wherever he goes next, if he does continue coaching, he succeeds. As Robert Kraft said, when he's not playing for the Patriots, just like when Tom Brady left, I will be rooting for him. I hope he catches Don Shula's record. Hell, I hope he contends for a Super Bowl. I really do, even though it would really hurt to see Belichick holding up the Lombardi Trophy for another team. But I don't know if it's going to happen. And I do think, look, the Patriots are in a unique situation, right? They've been grooming Gerard Mayo to be the head coach since it sounds like 2019 now, when Robert Kraft decided that's something he wanted to do when he went to Israel with Gerard Mayo. And so maybe they wanted to stick with Bill another year, but they also didn't want to lose Gerard, and they say, hey, we got to make this move now, even if it's a year earlier than we expected. And with that in mind, I think less stable franchises would be crazy not to bring him in as a head coach. But if he's not answering those questions about player personnel and a lot of these teams aren't willing to give him full control of the roster, well, he's probably not going to get a job. And he may be done as a head coach. And that's really sad to see. I hope this changes. I hope he goes to Atlanta, or if he takes a year off, I hope he goes somewhere else. Again, I'm rooting for him. But this is a troublesome situation now, and it really has changed a lot just in the last 2 days. I'm rooting for Bill. Let me know what you think if you're watching on YouTube in the comments below. Do you think Belichick's going to have another job? Will you be rooting for him at his next organization? And where would you like to see him coach? If it's in Atlanta or if it's somewhere else, be sure to like this video and subscribe on YouTube, or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll be back tomorrow with more Patriots coverage as we head toward NFL free agency. A lot of potential news about the offensive coordinator role. It looks like DeMarcus Covington is the heavy favorite to be defensive coordinator, but maybe that'll change in the coming days. We'll be there to report it along the way.